Hi, my name is Ron English, and this is the Big Genius podcast where we find the coolest, most interesting people in the world and we pry a bunch of information out of them. Today we have a legend. Think of this as art history class where we actually have a person who is part of art history. So instead of three lines in an art history book, you can ask her anything you want, and you can hear it from the person that created the culture, Lady Pink.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here to speak to you guys. And you do all realize you're in detention. Look what I found this big old fat marker. Someone's responsible. You're all in trouble. You are in trouble.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll start off with a question you probably have answered a million times, but once upon a time you were a kid and you were engaged in a activity that your parents probably weren't happy with, or maybe they didn't know about, um, and you probably thought a certain thing at the time about what you were doing, and you probably think differently about it now because who knew that this was going to become a global culture and that half these kids are involved in it in their own ways, and it's quite respected now. So if you can answer the question in two parts, just tell us like what you thought you were doing, in the late '70s, and what you think about what you were doing now in a historical context.
Well, when I first started tagging up and writing, I was only 15. So I was doing what was important for a kid of 15. I want to be down with the popular crowd. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to have adventures and be down with, the new movement that was going down. I was an artist. Yes, I was already going to art high school. Sure, but then I got down with the criminals and they wanted to go into and paint subway trains. And that's not what most girls did because this was like really, really hard manual labor, climbing walls and running and sneaking around with big bags of paint, almost like going on a war mission or some military thing. That's not attractive to girls. But for some reason, it was attractive to me. Now, if I had a kid that wanted to do that at the age of 15, I would medicate them. I would not be having any of that. My parents found out right away I was breaking the law and sneaking out the window and coming back completely filthy and dirty and covered in paint, and they knew what was going down, but they supported the galleries and the exhibits. It's definitely not the vandalism and the going to the worst neighborhoods of New York with like five handsome young men, and God only knows what I was doing with them. They hoped it was only painting.
That's great. And now, how do you look at it?
Well, I look at it as in like, yes, we were trailblazers, but we had no idea. We were painting trains, trying to figure out where we were going to be when we grew up. And sure, some of us were starting to exhibit and sell paintings and have big bank accounts and all, but they were telling us that, the art market is fickle. And this might just be a fad, and in a few years it's going to evaporate, and you're going to have to find yourself a real job,
Hmm.
something like that. And in high school, although I was majoring in architecture, I realized that you have to go to architecture to university to be an architect for so many years. It was horrific, and I was cutting art classes all the time, so I failed art school honestly. So
Hmm. You're one of the few people that was not only famous when you were young, but also like to bring up the movie Wild Style. That was half documentary, if I'm correct. So I mean, that really was very close to what your real life was, and you played yourself. How does that feel like now?
So the movie Wild Style was the very first film, about hip hop, about graffiti, breakdance, rapping, all linked together, and it was born by the brilliant mind of Charlie Ahern, which was just another, a white guy hanging around the scene with us. As he met people and saw things, he wrote them into his film. He saw an actual real love story between myself and Lee, the king of graffiti.
Hmm.
He wrote that into the film. He rented a train yard. He met graffiti artists, saw the trains painted, commissioned to have some more painted, and rented a train yard, and all of this. Yes, it was using real people. Nobody was an actor in that movie. It is so independent. It is so raw, and I'm not the biggest fan of that movie, but it
Hmm.
is hugely important because the second movie after that, I believe, was by Harry Belafonte, Beat Street, and by then Hollywood watered it down, diluted it, and changed the story a bit to fit the masses'
Hmm.
tastes.
And then how about Henry Chalfant?
Henry Chalfant is a photographer who went out there on his own without knowing anyone and just started documenting this beautiful subway trains as they rolled by. With a motor drive, he stood with a tripod like this and photographed those things as they went by. Slowly, he started to meet the graffiti writers and Martha Cooper, another photographer who loved to document graffiti and the city and the people as a whole. They put out the very first books, Subway Art, Spray Can Art, back in 1982. And that took the world by storm. It went everywhere and infiltrated every corner of the world. And now we have the world's biggest art movement, 40, 50 years later.
Yeah, that was kind of like the Bible.
Absolutely, it was the Bible. So it was reprinted, more than a decade ago in a larger format, and it's got all the subway trains that we all painted in the dark at the risk of our lives.
Hmm.
For what? Just for props from our peeps?
Well,
Was that it?
it was also interesting because it was the best of the best. So, like, once it hit Germany, everybody had to be better than the people in subway art, and not like the Snake or the early people that were just kind of writing their name or stuff. Like, they had to take the best of the best and then be better than them. So, like, I remember when it hit Germany, it was all like the next level.
Yes,
There wasn't a
yes.
lot of tags, just pieces.
So, as graffiti started in the late 60s, by the mid 70s, we had like amazing, crazy, wild style, top to bottom whole
Hmm.
cars, and the best of the best had emerged. Already by 76, 77, 78, the masters, it was set.
Yeah.
The huge whole cars by Blade and Lee and Kane One and all of these cats, right? So by the time I came along, there was a lot of deeds to catch up to and masters to try to emulate or be inspired by. That was already going down. So then the books came out, and in the 80s, it went over to Europe, and they only had these books to go by. And we teach master to apprentice. They didn't have that. They just had these books. They copied our letterings, and they did a horrendous job. It was terrible at first. It hurt our eyes, literally. But within a few years, they got better, and then they surpassed their masters. And then they came to New York asking for us to guide them into the subway system, so the European kids could paint our subways in New York City. And within a few years, they didn't need guides anymore. They were just going ahead
Hmm.
and burning all our spots and doing massive whole cars in New York City, pulling out, pulling out. And the police were like, oh my God, what's going on? So when those European kids get arrested, they just get thrown in jail till their plane ticket comes up, and then they get exiled from our country for about 10 years. A New
Uh,
Yorker or an American breaking the law and doing vandalism on a subway, they're going down for a felony.
right.
So it's not so easy for us Americans to do it.
Yeah, and I know that certain people that you're very close to, and you, like the Vandal Squad, came very hard after you. Um,
Yes, yes.
I don't know if you want to talk about that or.